What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Happy Halloween, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings office in Boston. We are brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GoJo15. Got a great show for you guys today. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us that 5-star rating. Check us out live here Monday through Friday, DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. We got some great guests today. We're going to talk about the NFL trade deadline that's coming up this afternoon, the College Football Playoff Rankings Committee's first round of rankings going to come out later today. But it's also Halloween, which means right now we have assembled the all-star squad of my father, who is Moses, but a very specific Moses, myself, who is as I look at myself now, much more in line with Macho Man Randy Savage than Rex, the owner of Rex Kwon Do from Napoleon Dynamite that I was trying to channel, and Jesse Cofield is a mom trying to do her best.
Yeah, I took this out of my daughter's dress-up box on the way out the door this morning.
And it looks wonderful, Jesse.
It looks like you've planned it for months, Jesse.
Good. That's what I was going for. Yes.
You pulled it off very well. I am Charlton Heston playing Moses. That's what I am.
Wow.
From one of my favorite movies, The
Yeah.
Ten Commandments.
I was just going to say, there are a few things. My dad built his life around content. My dad's seen more movies than you, more TV shows than you. He's watched them all, and he's watched them twice. He's still somehow unlocked even more seasons of Hell on Wheels than anybody else. But the crown jewel among them is every year, 10 Commandments season comes on, and Dad is locked and loaded, glued to the TV screen. And brought up a good point in this show. It would be an awesome party trick to be able to throw your staff and just have it turn into
really would.
Underrated trick from the Bible.
Would be one of the great tricks of all time. I would love to do that. If I throw this, all I'm going to do is have to get up and get it then, because it's going to do nothing. So that's why I'm just playing the part. I wish my hair and beard were a little whiter, but I guess I don't, because that means I'll be older. So that will come in time. But each year, the Moses will kick in more and more as Charlton Heston went through, the movie there and got to the white hair. That's eventually where I'm going to be.
Question, when is 10 Commandments season? Like, when does this movie get watched every year?
Well, I mean, it's usually around, what is it? Why am I drawing a blank now?
I'm waiting for you to fill it in here, because I'm fascinated how far from Catholicism's teachings you've fallen to where, if you know where the 10 Commandments movie gets played.
Been a while. I'm going to need the wife to text me real quick on when that is again.
We'll come back to that. We'll get back to
that. I don't remember. I haven't followed a lot of the Catholicism.
Christmas or Easter, it's one of those two. That's all you really need to say there.
Probably lean toward Easter on that one, but probably Christmas. Who knows?
This is where you put the T and the F on your paper in high school or college, and you just kind of fudge it so it looks like both here right now. We will get to, as Dad said, tricks. We will get to tricks or treats in a little bit, because it is Halloween, which means our show, which is a show comprised of an actual type 2 diabetic and one who aspires to be, means we got to give out candy takes on this
without
show.
A doubt. Yeah, there are specifics here. Yeah, there are specifics here that you can't be that person. That person in the neighborhood that does that thing that we're going to get to. So,
oh God, I'm scared.
This isn't the day to all of a sudden think about little kids' teeth, okay, and hand out toothbrushes or pennies or whatever. Stop it.
All right, I want to know if anybody in 2023 even understands the concept of handing out pennies. Did people really give out pennies when you were a kid?
They gave out change because
depression stuff is this.
Well, they didn't want to give out. They didn't want to give out candy because they didn't want to go candy to kids. So they gave out and they were little kids, so they just gave them like pennies or a nickel or something. Yeah, that was done.
You could buy a loaf of bread with that back when you were a kid.
Oh, okay. So seriously, is that where we're going? We're going to do old jokes?
That basically got you like a half gallon of gas back in, 1945?
All right. We done? We done with the age shaming again? I get it enough from Jess Matana, on Golic and Smetty. I got to get it from you guys as well. Because, Jesse, I know you're thinking about it.
I don't know. I feel pretty old these days, so.
She looks like the saddest Batgirl right now, doesn't she?
Jesse had the Forrest Way look in her eyes right now.
She really does.
We will veer away from that and towards the light right now, because we woke up this morning expecting a day full of NFL trades. There's a lot to get to on that front with the number of prospective trades out there, we've already seen a couple work their way in, but the NBA said, hold my beer. James Harden, you are now a Los Angeles Clipper. Waking up this morning to the news from ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski that the Los Angeles Clippers had acquired 10-time All-Star James Harden in a trade with the Sixers on Monday night. The Sixers sent James Harden, PJ Tucker, Philip Petrusev to the Clippers for Marcus Morris, that Morris, not Markieff, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, KJ Martin, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, 2 second-round picks, and a 29 pick swap, along with an additional first-round pick that will be routed from a third team. The Clippers and that third team are now finalizing those details still, and the Sixers will waive Danny Green to create roster space for the trade, sources said. So, Dad, James Harden gets exactly what he wants. Like always, we said there are very few inevitabilities and eventualities in the NBA that you can count on, but James Harden made this happen. And so now I guess the question becomes, is there any reason to believe it's going to work this time? Him, Paul George, Russell Westbrook, and Kawhi Leonard holding it down for the Clippers. Does that now seem like the big four that can get it done?
Well, all I got to say is, I mean, kids, look, stamp your feet and whine, and maybe you'll get your way. I mean, that's what Harden has done for a while, right? He's been like a little child in the way he acts, but he gets his way. He's a great player, and that's certainly the biggest reason, obviously, he gets his way. But will it do any good? That's going to be the thing. It's a guy who in the regular season has been incredible, the postseason not so much, and now he's with a bunch of other guys who are from, Los Angeles. In that area.
Everyone who's ever called Los Angeles home just decided, you know what? Coming back and playing for the Lakers might be tough at this juncture with LeBron and what they got going on there. So we can do the next best. It's the Pawn Stars meme. Yeah, I can't do that for you, but I can do the Clippers for you.
So we'll wait and see. I mean, we'll wait and see if it does any good. He is now the fourth former MVP to be moved 4 times. It's Moses Malone, Bob McAdoo, Russell Westbrook, his now teammate, and his teammate again, as I'll say, and now James Harden. So we went from OKC to Houston to Brooklyn to Philly and now to the Clippers, where he's actually reunited with Russell Westbrook again. They were together in OKC. They were together in Houston, and now they're together with the Clippers. So it's been a roundabout way for Harden. Will it do any good for this team? I mean, we'll wait and see. I would imagine most people are leaning toward no on this thing, that him being the linchpin to the championship. I don't think he was brought there to be the linchpin, but like he was supposed to be, him and Embiid in Philadelphia, bringing a championship there. And he wanted out, he got out. So let's see where it goes.
The Clippers are currently 5th in NBA title odds behind the Boston Celtics, the Bucks, the Nuggets, and the Suns now. So in the Western Conference, they are 3rd behind the Nuggets and the Suns at this point, with the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers now. Golden State is tied for them, both odds at plus 1,200 for those teams. And yeah, Dad, the easy answer for me right now would be no. You look at this team overall, this has now 3 of the top 6 active players in points scored among those who have never won a title, according to ESPN stats and info. And especially in this year's Western Conference, where you've got the Denver Nuggets, who are the defending champions, who still look poised to kind of go out there and win off the same brand of chemistry and Nikola Jokic's incredible feats. And then the Phoenix Suns, who seem like the one legitimate challenger because they've managed to now string together a couple of years of trying to put together a super team, maybe have a little bit more depth, and are going to get Kevin Durant to stay healthy for an entire season. So, yeah, they are understandably and justifiably 3rd in all that. I think the more interesting thing relative to expectation is going to be, what do the Clippers look like relative to their crosstown rival in the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James and Anthony Davis, who it still feels like have more expectations on them at this point, Dad, just because this lumps into, well, we haven't seen Kawhi Leonard really stay fully healthy in a long time. Right. Him and Paul George, even since they've linked up there, it hasn't felt like we've seen that duo touch the heights there. And you've got Russell Westbrook, who, while still a future Hall of Famer and a guy who's respected for his entire basketball resume, and Dad, the other interesting part of that, interpersonally, a guy who's well known for his work habits, being teammates with James Harden once again after we heard about the friction there between them and Houston because of how that was, I mean, more Chris Paul, I think, but I'm sure Russ, like the way he approaches the job versus the way James Harden approaches the job, probably two guys that don't have a lot to talk about outside of the facility.
Yeah, and the one thing to talk about, too, is their age. Paul George is 33, James Harden is 34, Kawhi Leonard is 32, and Russell Westbrook is 34. So, I mean, you got them together, and it certainly isn't going to be for long, and you got guys together coming toward the end of their career as well. So this is akin to trying to catch lightning in a bottle with the older players here. And Kawhi Leonard, that's the perfect question. Can he stay healthy? Remember, he bagged on the league in their new kind of issuing of, hey, we don't want guys sitting out for this load management. And he's like, mine isn't load management, mine's actual injury. And we're all like, yep, unfortunately is, because what a great player he is when he is healthy. But unfortunately, you haven't seen a ton of that, because when he is ready to go, he is something.
Yeah, and so that's going to be the question there. We have no idea what shape James Harden's going to show up in right now. Was away for most of the entire preseason with the 76ers, tried to come back and play in the first game there. They were like, no, you're going to go ahead and sit this one out, bud. On the other side, Dad, for the 76ers, honestly, it's got to be a sigh of relief in that building just to be done with this at this point. Like, obviously, for them, you took on a couple of expiring contracts and positioned yourself to potentially be able to make another move to try and position another star player alongside of Joel Embiid, who had to be looking at this situation. We said going back to Milwaukee in their opening night game, looking out at what one team had done for their star versus what the 76ers had done for theirs, trying to swap the deck as best they could. Daryl Morey went to a tried and true in James Harden, and it bit him in the ass something famous. And so now, at least for the 76ers, they get to turn the page. They no longer have that headache in their locker room, and they get to focus on what are they going to turn this into? What are they going to use these assets to make now? Because all the draft picks in the world don't really matter when you're trying to win in the here and now with the remaining few years you'd imagine of Joel Embiid's prime physical peak for a guy that's already been oft injured and had to deal with that in a lot of postseason runs.
You sit there and look at the teams and the players, and somehow it just doesn't seem like Embiid, Maxey, and Harris are going to be that three names that carries a team to a championship. And that's and kudos, Philly's been trying, right? The whole process from years ago to what they've been trying to build and players that they have had and trying to get that championship. And you wonder, is it going to run out of time? For a Joel Embiid, to end up somewhere else, because right now I just don't think they have, and we'll see what they turn this all into. But right now, I don't imagine any feel they have the juice to compete with the top of the Eastern Conference.
No, so going to be fascinating there. We mentioned the odds before. The Sixers now 10th in odds at plus 1,800 on DraftKings Sportsbook for the championship. So they're not done yet. I'd imagine there's going to be another stanza to this for the Philadelphia 76ers. But at the very least, Philly, you have now purged yourself of the James Harden experiment and your role in all that. So congratulations, or I'm sorry, whichever feels more applicable to you at this current juncture, because that's where we are. With James Harden at this point, this has become the story around him. It's not the guy who was an MVP. It's not the exemplary basketball player. It's not the beard. It is what he does off the court to get to what he wants. And now we start the clock on how long this will last with the Clippers. Is this the last chance? As Kevin Garnett said, you only get so many wiggles. You don't get infinite wiggles. James Harden might have infinite wiggles at the rate that he's been operating at. And so we'll see if that's the case. Dad, football-wise last night, switching gears a little bit, we had Monday Night Football, Lions versus Raiders, and man alive, this was an ugly football game that I think had two major takeaways. One, Jahmyr Gibbs finally unlocked. We are like in a video game when you've got just the outline and the silhouette of a character that you got to unlock through gameplay. We have unlocked Jahmyr Gibbs as a character in this game. My favorite stat from last night is that Jahmyr Gibbs had 189 total yards between rushing and receiving. He had 26 carries for 152 yards. That would put him at 37 yards receiving. That is more yards than the Raiders had on offense combined at 157 on the night. And so while David Montgomery's still been sidelined, Dad, Jahmyr Gibbs, their rookie first-round pick out of Alabama, finally bore the fruit that we heard everyone talking about going back to the preseason when Ben Johnson said, we're going to use him a million different ways. We're going to revolutionize offense with this guy. It turns out they were just going to hand him the ball and sometimes throw him the ball, but that still worked out pretty well. So it had to be exciting for everyone to see that. The other portion of this, Dad, is Davante Adams needs to be freed from that prison that he's in Las Vegas.
It is brutal. First, to the good side, and you're right, with Jahmyr Gibbs, with David Montgomery out with the injury. You mentioned 31 touches, 189 yards to Vegas, 45 total plays, and 157 yards. I mean, that is just a joke when you look at it. And then you look at the Raiders. The Raiders did not complete a ball to a wide receiver in the first half. Did not complete a ball to a wide receiver in the first half, which is stunning. The leading receivers were Josh Jacobs, Austin Hooper, and Hunter Renfrow. Each had 2 receptions. And then Jacoby Myers and Michael Mayer and Amir Abdullah and Davante Adams had 1. Davante Adams had 7 targets and had 1 reception as he was watching passes sail over his head to the point where he threw his helmet coming to the end of the game out of frustration. This offense is abysmal. I've had to cover them a couple of times. They just can't get anything going at all. And Detroit did exactly what they needed to do. Detroit is now sitting at 6-2. Minnesota, even with their win at 4-4, we thought, okay, they still have 2 times they got to play each other. Can Minnesota get back into this? But as we know, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. He's done for the year. So that's pretty much over. This is Detroit's division, which they haven't won in like 3 decades. So they're sitting pretty. They did exactly what they needed to do. So the 2 sides to talk about this is Detroit doing what they needed to do and looking good doing it, and the Raiders just horrid in this offensive side of the ball.
Let me just say this. In 2 weeks, on November 12th, the Las Vegas Raiders are supposed to play the Jets in primetime on Sunday Night Football.
I'm supposed to do that game.
Roger Goodell, if you let this happen, what did we even do that whole offseason saga about being able to flex primetime games? You guys took all that heat from us complaining about how it would be a disservice to fans and players to try and change. No, you know what? In this case, it would be overwhelmingly worth it if you guys change this game, because if we've got to watch that in primetime right now, I am going to probably snap. So do the right thing. The league office needs to step in and save us all on this one. They need to. Honestly, Dad, if I'm Davante Adams waking up today, the trade deadline's coming up at 4 o'clock Eastern, I'm just going to go and throw out and send a wire that I've been traded and fill in a team and see what happens. Just go rogue. Because at this point, what's the worst they can do? Make you stay in Las Vegas? That's already seems like your lot in life right now. They brought you over here to play with your best friend. They traded him away, and now they got you sitting here in hell with Josh McDaniels and broken Jimmy Garoppolo. You don't deserve this, Davante. None of us believe that.
It is brutal. And again, to your point, I do the Sunday night games for Westwood One, and that's where you can flex. You can start flexing Monday night games a little later in the season. And there's a formula and a process to it that's more complicated than I care to know. But what it does affect is, I keep saying, should I do my travel to this game? And they're all like, hold off. We got to wait and see what game would like we'll find out today. For that game in a couple of weeks, that's supposed to be in Vegas with the Jets in Vegas. Is that going to happen through the process of flexing? So we will find out. It's not just as simple as snapping your finger. There is a process to it. But I am one of those that waits in the wings to hear before I have to make my travel schedule.
We will wait and see if Dad is forced to go to Vegas, and if the rest of us have to burn our eyes watching that off.
I don't mind going to Vegas. You know me. You can find me at seat 4 on the blackjack table. I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
On the other side, quickly, the Detroit Lions, Dad, looked pretty good, not great. The offense had a bunch of mistakes in this game. Fumble coming out from backed up inside their own, near their own end zone. Fumble going in the goal line. A pick 6 by Jared Goff to his old teammate Marcus Peters. So there were a bunch of warts in there, but in general, they were able to hand the ball off and be hammer versus nail for the majority of last night. The Lions defense looked incredible. 6 sacks in that game. When they decided they wanted to line up and blitz on third down, there was basically nothing Vegas could do to stop them. And so they had to be pretty happy with that performance as much as anything, but getting back on track after that bad loss.
And you look at the games coming up, Mike, for them. I mean, Chargers, Bears, Packers, Saints, Bears. I mean, all absolutely winnable games for them to really stretch their lead in the division right now.
Yeah, no, the Lions should run away and hide with the NFC North at this juncture for all the reasons that we've mentioned. So now it's going to be for them and many others, knowing that, how high does this climb, and does it prompt them to make any moves as we approach the trade deadline today? So coming up next, we will take a look at some of the names expected to be on the block today. That's next here on GoJo and Golic.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. The news was confirmed. Kirk Cousins officially out for the season with a torn Achilles. It was confirmed by an MRI, losing Cousins. Obviously a massive blow. Trade deadline is at 4 p.m. Eastern today. What moves are the Vikings going to make? Who else in the league could be on the move? The guys are standing by with Brad Spielberger to discuss this and more.
Yes, very excited to welcome in Pro Football Focus salary cap analyst Brad Spielberger to help us get ready to digest what's going to come up today. Brad, appreciate you taking the time to join us on the NFL trade deadline day here. And Jesse just mentioned the Minnesota Vikings, one of the teams that everybody's been looking at here. Derrick Henry with the Tennessee Titans is a name a lot of people floated. I know people looking at the Broncos here. As you sort of assess the landscape of the NFL right now, what's the most likely trade that you see happening today? What's the outcome that you think actually has the best chance?
Yeah, I think a lot of those teams you mentioned had a couple wins the last few weeks that maybe changes the calculus. Obviously, losing Kirk Cousins maybe gets Minnesota to reassess there. But I think Washington, we heard coming into this weekend, if they lose this game against Philadelphia, one of those edge rushers could be on the move. You can't franchise tag both guys. They're both pending free agents. I think Montez Sweat, I think there's a pretty good chance he gets moved today. I think teams like Atlanta, San Francisco, Chicago, maybe a couple others are going to be in the mix there for Montez Sweat.
How much does money come into play? You look at the Leonard Williams trade. I mean, how about this guy was owed about 10 mil, got a check written to him for over $9 million by the Giants, sent out the door to a playoff team in Seattle. I mean, what a day for him. But like cap and money, situations that are involved in some of these trades.
Part of it, and that particular trend that you saw yesterday with Leonard Williams is also how Von Miller went to the Los Angeles Rams a couple years ago. It's how Roquan Smith went to the Baltimore Ravens last year. That is the new trend where we're getting more active on deadline day because teams are willing to convert that money, eat that cash, and they actually get better draft pick return too, because they basically say, hey, we just saved you $9.5 million in the Leonard Williams example, so you better give us a second round pick instead of hypothetically a third or whatever it was. That is the new trend, and I think it's why you're seeing more blockbusters each year at the deadline.
Well, with that in mind, when we think of people financially strapped by the decisions that they've made, I think of the Denver Broncos and that Russell Wilson contract there. And they've got a number of guys between Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I heard people even making calls about Pat Surtain in their secondary. Is there anyone that you think could most realistically be moved with the Broncos be inclined?
I think one of those receivers is probably a good bet. Surtain, I think you're talking multiple first-round picks, like a Jalen Ramsey level trade. And I don't know if a team is going to pull the trigger there. But I think those receivers, one of them maybe gets on the move. I think a guy like a linebacker, Josie Jewell, can maybe help out a team like the Dallas Cowboys that has a bunch of injuries there, or some other contenders, Philadelphia, looking to bolster their linebacker core as well. I think a lot of guys are available in Denver, I'm sure.
One of the things we see in other sports is when you trade for a guy, it's like this, you call it this rental for a few months, right? Is that equal in the NFL? Like, say a guy like Derrick Henry, who's on the last year of his contract, could we see something like that just to bring into like a playoff team for a few months and do like that 1 year rental?
And the thing there is, when a guy's on an expiring deal, if he then goes sign a free agent contract with a new team, the original team can get a compensatory draft pick, the whole system, where you add capital. So I think that's what you see there. That has happened a couple times. I think the most famous one was Golden Tate with the Philadelphia Eagles. They give up a third to go get him. He signs with the Giants in the offseason. They get a fourth, and they basically say, okay, we moved down around for 10 games of Golden Tate. Didn't really work out, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. And if it had worked out, it would have been worth it every single time.
So looking at the opposite direction, because Dad mentioned the word contenders, who do you look at and say needs to, in the worst way, make a move? Who's got amongst the teams that we expect to be playoff contenders, Super Bowl teams trying to make a run, has the biggest need that they need to go out and try and address in some way, shape, or form today?
I think what's interesting is we're talking a ton about Brock Purdy in San Francisco and not really talking about how that defense hasn't had the teeth they've had the last couple of years. I think defensive line, another piece on the edge, or potentially a cornerback for them makes a lot of sense. I know Kansas City always figures things out, but they really do not have much to speak of at wide receiver, even adding a depth piece, not even a splash like a DeAndre Hopkins, but a Paris Campbell, a Terrace Marshall in Carolina, just something to add to that room I think could be interesting. So those two for sure stand out. And Philadelphia, look, Howie Roseman is never satisfied. I don't think they're done either. I think you could add a receiver. I mentioned linebacker, corner. I think they're going to do something here in the next 12 hours or so.
I was going to say, I think they converted a bunch of Kevin Byard's salary into a signing bonus or something and cleared up money, and everyone's antennas immediately went up because now we all live in fear, Dad, of Howie Roseman and what he does.
It's the greatest thing when you hear converted into signing bonus, someone gets handed a big check. It's a beautiful thing. The trade deadline in the NFL just used to be another day with nothing happening, and we moved on. And then we saw with McCaffrey last year, TJ Hawkinson last year, how much that helped their teams. Do we see, even though we're just hearing the rumors, do we expect there to be a number of trades today, maybe even impactful trades, not just moving some, pieces along the deck to happen today?
I do. I don't know if it'll be as big as last year. Those names you just mentioned, Bradley Chubb goes for a first-round pick to the Miami Dolphins. I don't think we'll get as big, but I think there has been a change in kind of the perception of how the deadline works. I think teams are more honest with themselves. The good ones maybe are more honest. They need to make a push if they truly want to contend. And I think the bad teams also recognize, let's get as much draft capital as we can. Let's start this thing over, get young, get cheap, and just hit the reset button. So I think going forward, it's never going to be the MLB, but I think it is going to be more interesting than it has for a very long time, where we kind of expected nothing to happen on deadline day.
So, Brad, as we wrap up here, I guess the biggest binary in today, and the one most people are looking at here, Derrick Henry. Ultimately, when the clock ticks past 4 p.m. Eastern today, is Derrick Henry still a Tennessee Titan?
Yeah, believe so. They didn't rework his contract. You mentioned the restructure and then the big old check. That didn't happen yesterday for Henry. So if you wanted to do that for an expensive player, you had to do it yesterday by 4 p.m. Now I think you look at the cheaper guys, like a Jalen Johnson, request a trade in Chicago. He's on a rookie deal. Like, I think it'll be more of those type of players as opposed to the high-priced veterans because, they didn't get their contracts reworked.
Awesome stuff, Brad. We appreciate all the help. Hopefully it's going to be an exciting day like we've all gotten used to here. Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. All right, man?
Thank you, guys. Happy Halloween.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, Brad Spielberger, again, Pro Football Focus salary cap analyst there, Dad. And I think that's probably a good frame of mind, right? Like the things that we would have seen, especially, and I saw Chris Long point this out on their podcast, once you saw Derrick Henry get the workload this weekend that he did, if they were anticipating, even thinking about trading him, the last thing you were going to do is put him out there with the potential to get injured in that game. And instead, they ran him until the cows were coming home on that. That was the lion's share of their offense around Will Levis. They did a great job insulating their rookie quarterback. So I think he's right. Derrick Henry's going to stay put, not moving a foundational piece like that while you're going to try and break in a rookie quarterback, a conversation we kind of had around the Colts too.
Well, the big thing was after the Leonard Williams deal that time ran out on restructuring the deals. And I think that's exactly what Brad said. That's going to stop some of those moves from happening because you can't restructure. And I also think, Mike, one of the big things of why we haven't seen it, and maybe now we will more, is in the offensive side of the ball. Going to another team and learning a new defense, I think, in my eyes, is easier than learning a new offense. And you had, as we said, McCaffrey and Hockenson, two offensive guys, go to another offense and pick it up pretty quick. And I think that may have been a sticking point that we're now getting past, that, wait a minute, you're going to another offense. How quickly can you actually pick that up in November with, half the season left and be a viable, solution on that offense? And we saw it happen last year. So I wonder if that really and I think with younger coaches and younger GMs, you may start to see more risk taking in that case.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of aggression, I think, for that reason that you just mentioned too. So going to be fascinating. A couple other ones to pay attention to. We talked about the Vikings and Kirk Cousins off the top of the segment, did Jesse. And Jaron Hall's their backup there. You do wonder, Dad, we saw in Arizona Josh Jacobs benched this weekend.
Right.
Jonathan Gannon came out and said it's either going to be their rookie Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray starting the game this weekend, who could potentially come off IR. He's still on IR right now. And so you wonder if that frees up Josh Jacobs for a team in Minnesota who might decide, hey, we're going to make a run at this season after the last couple of games that we've been winners at, or are they going to stand pat and say the quiet part loud that maybe we're going to try and tank and get the quarterback of our future coming up later in the draft. Speaking of saying the quiet part loud, coming up next, yesterday, Dabo Swinney turned the volume up to 11 on one Clemson fan.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Dabo Swinney is having a tough year, okay? Clemson is nowhere near the national championship or even ACC title conversation, courtesy of a 4-4 start, 2-4 conference record. That's good for 10th in the ACC. Not good. Dabo obviously having a tough year, okay? And he appeared to reach his breaking point on Monday, courtesy of Tyler from Spartanburg. So Swinney sat on his weekly call-in show, Tiger Calls, and Tyler from Spartanburg took advantage of said opportunity, decided to ask Swinney about his $115 million contract that pays him more than $11 million a year, and he was not asking about it in a complimentary way. Swinney did not appreciate the question, to put it lightly. Here's part of the rant.
If you don't like how I run the program, don't be a fan. I don't care. But I'm the head coach, and I'm going to do what I believe is right for the long term of this program, what's best for the players, and what I think's best for the moment. If you got a problem with that, that's fine. But I'm not going to sit here and let you call. I don't give a crap how much money I make. You ain't going to talk to me like I'm 12 years old. You'd be freaking kidding me.
I mean, you're not going to talk to me like you're 12 years old. Like, you got to be having a really rough day, for Dabo to come out and just be, because I'm sure he deals with this type of crap all the time. So, he really was reaching his breaking point when he goes off like that.
Well, that's exactly what it is, Jesse. This is a man who's been hearing this now for weeks, because Clemson having 4 losses at all. I mean, Dabo mentioned it. This rant was multiple minutes long, where he highlighted their record. I think it's 12 straight 10-win seasons that Clemson's had, 2 national championships in the last 7 years. Dabo went up and down because he's looking around at this point and going, is this how quickly everyone turns on me here? Because at Clemson, they had not enjoyed any success anywhere close to this. That little old Clemson thing Dabo used to play on was actually the truth for a long time. And then Dabo Swinney came here, and along with the many great players that we've seen come through there over the years, obviously driving the ship on this, they have enjoyed an unprecedented run of success, the likes of which 99.9% of college football teams would trade their firstborn for. And now all of a sudden he's looking up in a 4-4 season. The one time, because remember last year, they won double-digit games again and salvaged it from a season that looked like it was spiraling out of control. This one actually hit the skids, and now all of a sudden everyone has turned on him. So yeah, it wasn't just Tyler and Spartanburg. It was the fact that everybody has been doing this to Dabo for weeks now. And Dad, I'm not going to lie, part of me kind of love this. Like, I know you're not supposed to do this. I know it's punching down. I know there's never going to be a public win coming out like this. And being the coach saying, if you want the job, apply for the job. I started as the lowest paid coach in this business. I worked my ass off. I'm not going to let this smart ass kid get on the phone and tell me how to do my job. On and on down the list. Yes, it is not advisable. But man, I bet that felt damn good, because I'm looking from the outside in going, 1, as a Notre Dame fan, please don't poke the bear anymore. But 2, man, this is how quickly y'all are going to switch it up on this guy.
Wait, guys, also you just have to know, because we've heard parts of it and whatnot, he talked for over 5 minutes without interruption. Like, this was a rant.
Well, and so did Tyler. His question was about 3 minutes of rambling nonsense that finally just ended in enough slights for Dabo to cut it off.
Exactly. You had to get out of that one, because your callers just keep going and going and going at times, and questioning, obviously, the salary. And listen, I'm with you, Mike, in you shouldn't answer that. You shouldn't hit send with your mouth, and just start basically talking. But every now and then, you reach a boiling point. You hit one point and you just, I doubt he'll do that again. But I would imagine it did feel pretty good, because where he's sitting now, he doesn't have to worry about that. And listen, he's right. He got paid for doing a great job. This team had done a lot over the years. When he was signed there in 2009, he was one of the lowest paid coaches. Brought him a couple championships there in a 7-year span. Became one of the top programs. And then you get paid that way. That's how it works, especially in college. And people want to complain about what the coaches make. Tough. Complain all you want. That's market value. And he got a monster contract for having his team as one of the top teams in the country for a number of years. So he does not have to apologize for that at all. And as we talk about, you reach your break. We've all done it, right? I've hit send when I shouldn't have hit send at times. Everybody kind of reaches a point where you do it and then you say, okay, I don't need to do that anymore. But Dabo has been going through this a little bit this year because this isn't a normal year from Clemson. And do you sit there and wonder, do people turn on you this quickly? Yes. See any coach at Alabama. Okay. Talk to our buddy Bill Curry when he was the head coach at Alabama, when little old ladies are coming up to him, telling him who he better not lose to, i.e. Auburn, or, better not have more than one loss. And just what a difficult job it is at a top program if you start to lose.
But I guess that's the thing and the difference, Dad. And I saw Bomani Jones was talking about this the other day on the Right Time, where he got asked about, who would lose their job first between Dabo Swinney and Jimbo Fisher. And he highlighted the truth is what Dabo has meant to this program is so outsized compared to some of these other places, because Clemson, especially in the last 35, 40 years, wasn't doing the things that Alabama had done, wasn't doing the things that a lot of these other top flight programs had done. Dabo's the sun and the moon around there, but apparently that light only lasts you so long, which has got to be the maddening part. I do wonder what this does too for his Q rating, Dad, because I think for a lot of people, Dabo's always been a polarizing figure, right? A lot of his opinions on the future of college football, paying athletes have always come up. He's had quotes that have usually been the thing that drives sports talk radio, and a lot of it's been tied back to this is a guy who seems overwhelmingly optimistic at times. This was a very real moment. Like, Dad, I don't know about you. We had seen rants from the likes of Jimbo Fisher in recent years, his feud in the offseason with Nick Saban and stuff like that. And we always feel like we can tell when someone finally snaps and it's real. And it felt like Jimbo got there last offseason. This didn't feel like he was putting on a show for somebody.
No.
Here. This felt like a man who was actually voicing his frustration in a way we talked about the other day with Dave Dorn and some others. We've seen more college coaches than ever comfortable with doing.
Oh, without question. And it's been building. He talked about the bandwagon fans. Good. Let's lighten the load, on these guys. He has gone to the point now where he probably needs to stop, right?
Yeah.
Where, because he's done it a couple of times now, because they're in an area that he's not used to being in. Remember when he got there, he was paid a little over $816,000. He was hired after being an interim head coach, had no prior coordinating or head coaching experience. So he was one of the lowest paid guys, and he built that program to a powerhouse. And now he's seeing people turn on him in a short amount of time because they're not where they were. But that's fan. That's why it's short for fanatic. That's where we are. And, you just need to kind of realize that. But we're all human. We're not robots. Coaches, players are not robots. That's why they react to these things at times, the way they do. And when they say, oh, man, don't do that, don't do that. You're right. Don't do that. But every now and then, I'm with you. It feels good to do, even though, unfortunately, it doesn't solve anything.
And you mentioned the other day, Philly fans coming up to you in the grocery store when you were playing for the Eagles. It's one thing to see it as message board fodder and to hear it in the din around the program, the conversation, because like we said, these coaches do hear all this stuff. In this day and age, you can't hide from it. It's not like that lie coaches used to say, we don't pay attention to the outside noise here. But then to have someone with the audacity to call in, and I know he's not saying it to your face, but saying it to your person in that way, I could see that being the final straw. I understand and weirdly appreciate that even in that moment, Dabo's like, no, you're not going to talk to me like that after everything that I've done for this program. I could kind of understand and appreciate that, because it got me a little bit fired up, Dad, knowing the Clemson situation, knowing what he's given to that program, along with the players, right? Like, he mentioned a lot of his accolades there. It's worth noting the players that he had there were great, and a large reason for the accomplishment. And a large reason why they're struggling right now is the fact that they've lost quality players at those positions. But, man, I was a little frustrated on his behalf, and I thought, man, that had to feel great to do. Like you said, that's going to be the end of it. And it makes me more and more worried for Saturday as a Notre Dame fan, because this is the exact kind of moment where Clemson pulls some wild stuff off.
But he does, I think, have to buy into where we are in college ball now with NIL and with the portal. He seems to be fighting that a bit. But the one thing I will say, he has not thrown his players under the bus, much like a couple other coaches that we have talked about, and Narduzzi at Pitt and Deion Sanders did that a bit. While they both ended up taking responsibility as well, they did throw their players under the bus some.
Yeah, Dabo tossed his quarterback under the bus a little bit of something after one of the last few games here, so he hasn't been immune to it either. He hasn't been perfect. And like you said, you can criticize Dabo Swinney and his current vantage point and place in the sport, but doing it in the way that Tyler from Spartanburg did, probably not advisable.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Yesterday was the sports equinox, and in honor, we had a GoJo and Golic parlay hitting all 4 major sports. And guess what? It do be hitting. It did cash. Yes, it do be hitting. You can see it on the board right there. GoJo, you had a nice little tweet with the money face. We really enjoy seeing that.
Money coming out, baby. Money coming out. We just like to dial up winners for you guys here, and usually I reserve those for college football picks on the weekend. You can follow along. We've been close on a couple of those parlays here, but close
doesn't matter.
And
Close
hand
doesn't
grenades.
matter. It's exactly right.
This
Close doesn't matter.
Is across the line. My favorite part of all this hitting, because we had a lot of great sports action last night, Dad. I certainly want to talk about the World Series. We had Game 3 last night. The Rangers take a 2-1 lead, but not without taking a little bit of pound of flesh out of their side as well in that process. But my favorite part about all this was, one, the Lakers, who we talked yesterday with Gil Alexander about coming off of the first night of the second night of a back-to-back here, gutting it out and finding a way to win late against Kevin Clark's Orlando Magic. But my favorite part of all this was going out on the limb. We haven't watched or paid attention to a ton of hockey to start the season. We'll be honest with you guys. But Connor Bedard's the name of choice going in, the Blackhawks' first overall pick, this future savior of the sport. And we're like, all right, over half a point. What are the odds? In an 8-1 ass whooping by the Phoenix Coyotes, who knocked in the only goal. Connor Bedard, our hero,
saved
baby.
Us.
I love
exactly
that kid.
Right.
Always
saved
have.
Us. Yeah, and the Lakers given 2 points and they win by 3. Orlando not able to get a bucket late in that one to change that one around. I did think the Lions was probably the easiest one to get to that we got. And then, you're just not sure in a World Series game with Texas, Arizona. We went with under 9 there. And it's amazing how you watch them, because I don't really have a horse in the race. So since I spent a lot of time in Arizona, I probably lean toward the Diamondbacks in this one. But I was less concerned about who was winning and more concerned about the score. And it was 3-0 for the longest time. Like, great, that was good. All right, we're going to stay under 9 here. That was the concern for me.
Yep, exactly. It ruins your brain here, but also gives you something a little fun to look forward to in a game you might not have otherwise cared about. And, Dan, a lot of people, despite what the TV ratings say, certainly care about the Rangers series here. And the trouble we mentioned, Max Scherzer and Adolis Garcia both exiting last night with respective injuries. Max Scherzer left after 3 injuries because of a back injury, and Adolis Garcia after 3 innings. And Adolis Garcia as well, his left side grabbing there. So a lot of concern there, especially with Garcia, who has been a massive force in this offense, was the MVP of the LCS round. And so lots to worry about there for the Rangers, even though they take now a 2-1 lead and have been stellar through most of this postseason.
They're undefeated on the road. I mean, they've won 9 consecutive games on the road this postseason. That's incredible what they've done. But the Garcia injury, again, grabbing his siders back. So you wonder if it's an oblique. Again, you have that muscle. You have a fear of then pulling it or tearing it. If you have some good fat over the top of it, maybe that helps. But he doesn't. That dude's a stud. So we'll see how bad this. Scherzer, was coming off the injury just to get on the roster in the postseason. So you weren't sure how that was going to go. Yep. Now he's got the back injury as well. See that. But really, it's Garcia you're worried about the most, because this guy has been absolute money through the postseason.
Yeah, he has got an MRI post-game. The results will determine his status going forward. The Rangers said that they're being optimistic, but we'll know more tomorrow, according to Bruce Bochy. So we'll find that out today, Dad. But they take the lead in that series. They help us out in that parlay. So very excited and very appreciative of them on that one.
Congrats to all that jumped in on our parlay and
listen,
got to eat a little dinner because of that. Enjoy.
We're happy to help you out here. The Lions gave me a little bit more of a scare in that than they need to, with the red zone turnovers and the pick 6 and the late missed field goal. They left the door open every chance they could for that Raiders team. That is just a Raiders offense that is wholly incapable of walking through that door. Stumbled over it, fell into something. They're now bleeding out in the doorway here, and so we'll wait and see. If going into the trade deadline today, something can happen, Jesse, for them.
Guys, I just want to note, we have the official number. It was over 9,000 people hopped on this parlay.
There we go.
All right.
Let's go.
Strong.
Let's go.
Enjoy the money.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
We love to see it.
That's why we're
love
here.
To see it. I would imagine, Dad, switching gears here momentarily, that over 9,000 people would have signed the change.org petition to make this particular headline happen. We talked a little bit about Dabo Swinney and some college football in the last segment here. We got big news that shook the state of Iowa yesterday. As the announcement came from interim athletic director Beth Getz. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Getz or Gotts. I don't want to lump her in with Stu Gotts automatically there.
No, don't do that.
But they got the announcement that Iowa offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz, the son of longtime head coach Kirk Ferentz, will not return for the 2024 season, Dad. And for a lot of people asking why announce this now in the midst of a season where there's still a lot to play for them. The Big Ten West has been largely in their control for a while. And so I look at this, Dad, and I say, this seems like a PR move, especially in the portal era, to one, show the team, hey, we're going in a different direction. If you're an offensive player, Iowa could still be a place that you likely want to come. But also, maybe just from a PR standpoint, one of the worst mistakes they ever made was that contract, the incentive-laden contract they had given Brian Ferentz. For anyone unfamiliar, he needed to score at least 325 points during the season to be eligible for a bonus and to continue to be employed there. And the drive for 325 became a rallying cry and really a source of mockery from so many people in watching Iowa each and every week as their offense struggled mightily. Quarterback injury this year, certainly to Cade McNamara, who came over from Michigan, didn't help that cause much, but it had been something that had become a story in a really negative way that I don't think Iowa anticipated and probably should have when they gave him that contract. And so now getting out ahead of this certainly creates an awkward situation at family dinner for the Ferentz in the Ferentz house, but now I think is designed to provide some clarity and some hope for the fan base, the players, and everybody involved going forward.
So you do something this early for a couple of reasons, for optics and for the practical application that you can apply here. Optics to your fans to say, hey, we see we have an issue here and we're making a change. Optics, as you mentioned, the portal is so important now to future offensive players, hopefully top rung players that will say, okay, this offense is going to be different because they're going to bring in someone who runs a little bit more of a high flying offense. And then also you can start that process now. You can openly be looking for a coordinator because you basically said you're going to fire your coordinator. Now, the other side of that is that a lot of people you're looking at have jobs as well, and it is not legal to be trying to hire a guy who has a job. That's why a lot of backdoor things happen in that case. But at least from their standpoint, they can be openly looking and scouting for an offensive coordinator. And then there is the family dynamics. Now, they had to see this coming, right? Sure. I mean, you put those parameters on it of the drive for 325, and it did become kind of a mocking thing. So everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was just envisioning, though, of how I would have to run this by your mother if you were working for me. Obviously, you're not working for me because your name's first on the show that you wouldn't relinquish. So I understand that. But in some case, if you were working for me, or if a son is working for a father, the process for getting the AD and those kind of meetings, the process I would have to go through is be with your mother to say, I'm thinking about, firing, our son. And to which the things that would be thrown at me. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And the discussion that would go on there that's got to be an interesting one.
It's got to be an interesting one to an extent. And we know with the power that Kirk Ferentz has at Iowa, I'm sure this wasn't something that came easily, but this was a contract signed by outgoing AD Gary Barta, who announced his retirement here.
Right.
And again, needed to average 25 points per game and win at least 7 games for Ferentz's 2-year rolling contract to be reactivated. And winning has not been the problem for them. They keep winning. They can't stop winning.
They do.
No one else in the Big Ten West wants to step up and do anything about that Iowa defense that's crushing the life out of anybody, but they still can't score. And Iowa, especially interim athletic director, angling probably for the full-time job making a move like this.
And again, I was saying what would happen in my case as far as trying to fire Mike from a job. Of what
you wouldn't
my
be able to do anything
would be going through. I wouldn't be able to go. I don't know what's going on, in the Ferentz household. So
no, exactly. So we'll wait and find out what that business is going to look like. But coming up next, we get the College Football Playoff Rankings Committee's first round of rankings coming out tonight. We are going to head down to Texas to check in with one of our good friends, Heather Dinich, on what to expect tonight.
I'd argue we have the best win in the country right now.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Happy Halloween and happy official start of college football playoff season. So the first set of CFP rankings set to be released tonight. We're about to get a glimpse of how the committee sees the college football landscape through these first 9 weeks of the season. There's definitely going to be a few surprises. Okay, committee typically has some variance from the AP top 25. And ahead of the rankings release, Steve Sarkisian took an opportunity to make a case for his Longhorns. He doesn't normally do this, but he did do this.
I'd argue we have the best win in the country right now. The fact that we go into Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and beat a team that was 52-1 in the previous 53 games of us going in there. And I hear so much about how tough the SEC is, but I haven't seen any of those teams go into Alabama and win either. So I feel pretty good about our team. And I think over time, this whole thing will play itself out. So we got to focus on what we need to do Saturday and play our best football.
Sell.
I mean, hey, he makes a fair point, fellas, okay? He makes a fair point. And now you have special guest, ESPN senior writer Heather Dinich, here with us to discuss this and more.
Yes, very excited. Heather Dinich, who does a phenomenal job covering college football overall, but is the czar of the college football playoff committee. She's got her ear on the door outside of a very well-catered room at a hotel in Dallas each and every year. So, Heather, is this like a reunion for you being back down there now?
Yes, it's like a holiday, though I don't know what holiday it is because there's Halloween stuff, there's Christmas stuff. You know, it's like a casino in here, guys. I don't know what time it is, what the weather is.
Oh, I love that analogy. So you're Wonder Woman, dressed up as Wonder Woman. Is there anybody on the committee that you believe is going to be wearing a costume?
Have you seen the pictures of these guys? I would have to bring them one and twist their arm. I don't think so, though it wouldn't surprise me if somebody presented me with the witch hat because pick your fan base, right? Whoever's left out.
Absolutely. There's always a lot of stakes associated when we start putting a number to this, because as everyone should be aware right now, we are in year 10 of the college football playoff. And so as we go into this, while we've had the AP poll out here, this is entirely different, entirely separate. Heather, as far as the other parameters going into tonight, what should people remember to start off with as we get to this first round of college football rankings reactions from the logistical standpoint?
People should remember how important statement wins are to this group. And Georgia doesn't have one. Their best wins are against Kentucky and Florida, which are both now 3-loss teams. Are either of those teams ranked by the committee? Because if they're not, Georgia doesn't have any top 25 wins. So the biggest question going in tonight, aside from who is number one, is how does the committee weigh resume versus eye test? And it sounds like a cliche, but it is the absolute truth because, quite frankly, Ohio State might be the best combination of those two to make a case for the top spot. Because if Penn State and Notre Dame are both top 15 teams by the committee, then who else in the country has 2 top 15 wins and is coming off a road win against a very respectable, well-coached Wisconsin team? And while they haven't been as dominant offensively, you look at Kyle McCord, 2 turnovers in that game. But at the same time, you've got a Heisman contender in Marvin Harrison Jr. You saw what they can do when Travion Henderson comes back after a month and just takes off for 162 yards. But Michigan's the most complete team in the country, hands down. So how do they weigh the fact that Michigan looks so good, but their best win is against 6-2 Rutgers?
So we sit there and look at what the 4 will be tonight. And then the thought is, obviously, if they keep winning, they're going to be in. But Heather, how about the positioning for 5 through 10 and just how important that is of where the committee is going to put you?
It's super important. And who is the highest ranked one-loss team? We heard Sark talk about Texas, and he's right, but with a slight clarification right now, he has the best non-conference win. I would argue that Washington has the best win as we sit here today against Oregon, which, again, back to the one-loss teams. Is Oregon or Texas, the highest one-loss team? Does any two-loss team have a chance? To your point, how far do you go down? The lowest anyone has ever been ranked in the initial CFP rankings and gone on to make the playoff is Ohio State. They were either 14th or 16th.
Or 16th.
They went on to win the whole darn thing. So to your point, like, this is a starting point and it will offer us some very important clues, but everyone knows, including the committee, though they don't look ahead, that this is going to change. And it should change because Michigan's toughest games lie ahead. I mean, there are a lot of teams that still have to play Washington and Oregon in the Pac-12. So there are a lot of moving pieces, but it's important to see where everyone is down there and where contenders' opponents are ranked as well.
Heather, one of the things you talked about, some of the criteria in here, out-of-conference wins, marquee wins, and certainly we know things like conference championships are supposed to be valued by the committee, as well as head-to-head wins. And you brought up Washington and Oregon in the Pac-12, who Washington got the win out in Seattle on their home turf. It was a close game. A lot of people might look at that and say Oregon felt like the better team. And since then, Oregon has very much looked like the more dominant team out on the field. How long does a head-to-head win hold that kind of value for teams, and how does the committee wrestle with that?
Well, if you guys remember in 2021, it didn't hold very, very long when Michigan State beat Michigan, and they went ranked Michigan ahead of Michigan State, and everybody lost their minds. And I think it could happen not with Washington and Oregon tonight, but with Texas and Oklahoma. One of college football's most storied rivalry games. Is Oklahoma ahead of Texas because they won that game, or not because they just lost to Kansas and they didn't look good in that close win against UCF? So I think that Washington stays ahead of Oregon right now because even though they haven't looked great in the last two games, they have found ways to win. The difference is Oklahoma lost. And the other thing, too, is that Texas has that win against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and I realize that's different from the head-to-head result, but Oklahoma has nothing in its non-conference schedule comparable to that. I want to say their best win is against SMU in the non-conference.
So much fun of this, Heather, is looking at different scenarios, right? And looming out there, not at the top now, and for them, it's unbelievably low at number 8 in the AP, is just Alabama lurking. So here's my first scenario. Michigan runs the table, goes undefeated. Florida State through the championship game undefeated. Washington stays undefeated through Pac-12. Georgia stays undefeated, and then Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. Now, Bama has one loss, Georgia has one loss, and there's 3 other undefeated teams. Does an undefeated team get knocked out of this thing?
So in that particular scenario, I think those 3 undefeated teams you mentioned get in along with SEC champion Alabama, and I think Georgia's in trouble. And wow. I think Georgia's in trouble as the SEC runner-up because of the same reason it could be in trouble right now, which is its strength of schedule. Tennessee would obviously be a great win for Georgia because that's at Tennessee. Beyond that, guys, what are we talking about here with Georgia's schedule? And if you don't win your league, you face a higher burden of proof in that selection committee meeting room to prove you're one of the top 4 teams in the country. So eye test would have to go a long way. And to this point, has Georgia passed the eye test every week? I don't know.
No.
So would they beat Auburn if they had not had Brock Bowers in that game?
Right. You're right.
No, it's a fair point. And that's a great point, too. A very human committee supposed to also take into account at times who is on and not on the field. Here, we remember this came up a couple of years ago in the Big Ten, specifically with some injuries there, but how they assess Georgia's performance now going forward without Brock Bowers. Heather, one of the other things that we've seen over the years is multiple teams from the same conference. The SEC obviously dominated that. We've seen in recent years Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten. Who would you say of the conferences that we have right now is best positioned to potentially field 2 playoff teams if things go the right way?
Wow. I feel that's a tough question because as we sit here right now, I want to say that this might be the year that it's extremely difficult for any league to get 2 teams in because we're talking about 5 undefeated teams here going into November. I guess if I had to answer that question, I would stick with what we saw last year, which is Ohio State and Michigan, simply because it's a similar blueprint. Ohio State did it last year because of wins against Notre Dame and Penn State. Where are they right now? Making a case for number 1 because of wins against Notre Dame and Penn State. So Can they beat Michigan? Does Michigan run the table and Ohio State's only loss is to them? Plus, does Florida State lose? We've seen the ACC go down a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Clemson has 4 losses. Miami hasn't looked good. North Carolina lost again. So does Florida State have to go undefeated to finish in the top 4?
So we saw Cincinnati, before they went to the Big 12, be the first group of 5 to make it into the playoffs. And we have such a great story. We have Air Force sitting there at number 17, undefeated. And we know teams above them, the undefeateds, we're not going to have, teams are going to start knocking teams from the undefeated ranks. Any shot at all for Air Force here? I know it's probably very minimal, but they maybe could get the New Year's Six Bowl, but where they could end up in this thing.
So as somebody who lives in Annapolis, Maryland, I do have a soft spot because I know what it takes to play football at the academies and have an understanding for that. That being said, no, they don't. It breaks my heart to say it, but that's the reality of the situation because of their schedule. And people can't believe I'm saying this, and I may be completely wrong, but they could have Tulane ranked ahead of Air Force when it comes out today, simply because of the schedule strength. Tulane lost to Ole Miss. I want to say their quarterback was out. It was a different type of game. They're still a very talented roster. So that to me is also an interesting conversation in the committee room as well. But strength of schedule means so much, and Air Force just doesn't have it.
It's going to be incredible. That conversation is one that Heather Dinich is going to hear tonight right outside the committee room's door here and be letting all of us in on here as she gets set to talk. Boo Corrigan, by the way, the chairperson for the committee this season. So he's going to be the voice tasked with going on set and talking to Heather, talking to Herbie and those guys and trying to explain the decisions of the other 12 people in the room for him, which is always a really unenviable spot. Heather, thank you so much for joining us on a busy day. We really appreciate you giving us some time. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon.
Thanks. Let me know if anybody gives you any trouble.
We will. Thanks, Wonder Woman.
Ready.
Yes, she is ready.
Ready to go here. Love Unbelievable stuff, as always, from Heather, who Dad does a great job of breaking down a really complicated picture around the college football playoff because, again, this is completely separate from the AP poll here. This is supposed to be starting from a blank slate. It is the 13 members of this committee going in this room and debating this with combinations of, so like she said, resume points. We're going to talk about strength of record as one of the premier metrics that this committee uses here. Strength of schedule, remaining strength of schedule, game control, all these things, along with the eye test for a committee made up of former college football coaches, executives and athletic directors inside the sport, a number of different people. It's a complicated formula to try and whittle down that almost always ends in controversy.
So, and it does, because you can give all the metrics that you want, but now you have 13 individual human beings breaking it down how they see fit, using metrics, using the eye test. The eye test gets thrown around and debated every year. So let's you and I talk. As I said, I in all honesty, I would really love to be on this committee when I'm done in the media. I watch tape all the time. I think I could do a good job on this committee. You cover college football every single week. So how much of the eye test would you use? Because as you talked about, the strength of record, game control, strength of schedule, all that. But when it comes down to watching the amount of tape that we would watch, how much would come down to eye test for you?
I think it's certainly, to me, is a decider when all other things are close, right? Because I think ultimately, if you're going to preserve, people always talk about the value of the regular season, the value of the games, they've got to matter. Actually playing and winning the games has to matter at some point. And so what you've done, strength of record, is the stat that we talk about and throw around with this all the time. For anyone unfamiliar, strength of record is a measurement, a chance that the average top 25 team would have at winning your team's schedule or doing better. So accomplishing the same record, given the same schedule, or better. And when you look at strength of record so far, Ohio State number 1, Florida State number 2, like we talked about, not surprising, Washington at number 3, and Alabama at number 4. Georgia's only down at number 7. It's not like what they've done has been a far cry statistically from everybody else when it comes to these resume points. They may lack, as Heather noted, that marquee win during the early portion of their season, but they're going to have a chance as the season goes on. Right now, they're 6th in remaining strength of schedule. That would include the SEC championship game where they'd have a chance for a win. And Dad, seeing them in person at their best, unload the clip on Kentucky on at home in between the hedges, that did look like the team. That moment where you got to see, okay, they've got a little bit of that. And part of this is we're dealing with a human committee who's watched for the last 2 years as Georgia has railroaded over college football and comes into this year with a lot of mental capital the same way that Michigan does. And so I think that eye test can be a differentiator when all other things are close or similar. Like I would have them tonight, Dad, if we're looking at this. I would have Georgia. I would have the way the AP has it. I would have Georgia at 1, Michigan 2,
yes.
Ohio State at 3, at Florida State is 4. I won't be surprised if that order is mixed up, but I think those are going to be the top 4 teams. And that's really all that matters. You could
That's all that matters.
Pretty much. I think any of those teams, aside from Florida State, you could sell me at number 1 between Michigan and Ohio State. You could put either of those teams at number 1, and I'd be fine. But I think that's got to be your top 4 in any order.
I agree, and which then leads to why it's so important who's 5, who's 6, who's 7, because you know right out of the gate, Michigan and Ohio State play one another. So you know one of those teams is getting a loss. So who would be the next team primed to jump into the top 4? So for me, I do think Washington will be be number 5. I think that will be the team, if they stay going undefeated, would jump into the top 4 over the loser of Michigan and Ohio State. And you have Oregon there again, but then again, Washington and Oregon. Hopefully, I hope for the sake of this race, end up playing in the Pac-12 conference with the amount of losses and or no losses that they have right now. Weakest conference right now is ACC, right? But if Florida State goes undefeated, they're in. Now, they are whooping teams. I'll give them that. But they're the weakest conference right now. But Florida State is in if they go undefeated.
They definitely are. I think looking at 5 and 6, I think I was a little too eye test on. I originally wrote this down. Washington should be at 5. And then you probably have to have, like, the Texas and Oklahoma debate is going to be fascinating because Oklahoma did get that win, but then just lost to Kansas. And we know the recency of this. It's always lose early, not lose late. There are a few hard and fast rules in the college football playoff. I used to do a ranking and reaction show with Jason Fitz when we were at ESPN. And 2 losses has been a non-starter in the 10 years now of the college football playoff, the 9 previous. We haven't had a 2-loss team go and be able to make it into the college football playoff. And usually if you get blown out, that's also your chance to exit the conversation in a lot of these things. But for Texas, they do have that marquee out-of-conference win. Their 1 loss was in a close rivalry game where they turned the ball over a ton and still looked like they had a chance to win it late. Do you put them or Texas, I think, at that 6th spot and then some version of it's going to be Washington or probably Oklahoma, Texas, and then Oregon, in that 5, 6, 7, 8 slot, organizing below the top 4.
And you know where it doesn't matter if they're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever is Alabama. If Alabama keeps winning, and they have a big one this week with LSU, that's a monster game. But if Alabama ends up in the title game with Georgia and they beat Georgia, I agree with Heather. They're in, right? I mean, they're to be in. So for that one, it doesn't matter where Bama is because they have that potentially on the horizon to just fly under the radar, as under the radar as you can be for one of the top 10 teams in the country and still have that chance to be there at the end of the year.
100%. I think if you look at the teams that are true contenders, because like Heather mentioned, in year 1, 16th ranked Ohio State ended up jumping TCU on the last weekend. Cardale Jones takes them on this ride, and they win the first CFP championship. But we've had other teams start off with their initial ranking in the teens, in the low 10s. And so there are teams plenty down here that are going to have an opportunity. You look at who I actually think the contenders are at this point, Dad. I think the Pac-12, it's Washington and Oregon. I think that's become a 2-team race now since USC's let the air out of the balloon. Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12, Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, I don't think still technically out of it because of the opportunities ahead of them. Although now after the loss to Ohio State, they'd need help getting to the Big 10 championship. So they would need a lot of help there. The SEC, Alabama, Georgia, and I think Missouri going into this weekend. They're a 1-loss team going into a matchup against number 1 ranked Georgia on the road this weekend. That would vault into one of the best wins of the season and get them into the SEC championship where they'd be able to potentially beat an Alabama.
You talk about 16 being the lowest ranked. Look at 13 to 16. LSU is 13. They have 2 losses. They're not getting in. Missouri is the team.
Yeah.
With the big matchup this week at Georgia, they're sitting AP number 14. They'll be in the teens probably tonight, but they have a shot. Louisville is sitting at 15 in the AP, with 1 loss. And Oregon State, 2 losses. Air Force, Heather already said, doesn't have a shot being undefeated. So I think Missouri, out of those teams, has the best shot if they can pull off the big win this weekend, a game you're covering.
Yeah, Louisville got dropped by Pitt, so I'm going to exit them
They're
from
done.
the chat based off that. By the way, rank the Dukes. The committee already said they're not going to. Justice for James Madison.
Yes.
Cowards.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Obviously, it's Halloween, okay? And the most popular sports-related costume, it's going to be Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, okay? We already know it. Mm-hmm. We already know it's going to happen. So we have this Spirit of Halloween, Taylor Swift's boyfriend thing, as you can see. But also, Travis Kelce gave out some helpful facts for people who may be trying to dress up as him.
The mustache is slowly starting to disappear, but I'll tell you what, man, that stash in the '87 jersey was pretty iconic there for a little bit. And it was and I had it when I met Taylor for the first time. So I guess just my stash, and then maybe what is it? Who knows, man? What else?
Football, maybe?
Oh, maybe a bracelet or something. I don't know.
Okay,
I love how much he struggled to come up with costume additions for himself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what am I?
We came up with our own. So it includes jersey, mustache, ill-fitting and ugly pregame outfit, 2 Super Bowl rings, not included, height and good looks. Oh, come on. His style is
ugly pregame outfit.
Yes, I stand by that.
Wow.
Really?
Wow. Okay.
He goes to like Parish Fashion Week and stuff. He's supposed to be one of the guys that actually knows.
Okay, but you just said the quiet part out loud. Have you ever seen something on a runway at Paris Fashion Week that you thought actually looked good?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I see highlights of that, and I'm like, who wears that? Who would wear that? Why is it
Jared
made like
Leto?
that, and who's getting it?
Jared Leto, he wears it, and it looks crazy. And now
I am very.
I agree. I agree with you, Jesse.
I wonder
agree.
if he'll wear the 1989 cardigan at the upcoming game here. It just dropped with the new re-release set. It would look phenomenal. That feels like his kind of style, and it never goes out of style. So, all right. So we've got the Travis Kelce Halloween starter pack there. I understand we've already also got some other Halloween starter kits as well, Jesse.
Yes. So in this same vein, okay, we have like the Spirit of Halloween graphic here. You can take a look at it. So we're gonna have you guess who this is, okay? So, aging football coach. It includes 6 Super Bowl rings, a hoodie, a whistle to spin. It does not include wide receivers or a Super Bowl quarterback.
Wow, I didn't even need the explanation. As soon as I saw this one, I could tell that was a hoodie and knew it was Bill Belichick.
Yes, I was going to say that is a very recognizable silhouette right there. Halloween costume that I'd imagine is not getting as much run in New England these days. We just saw disrespected Dabo Swinney go off on a caller, Tyler from Spartanburg in South Carolina for a similar reason. But, Dad, I don't see a rant like that anywhere in Bill's future.
No, Bill doesn't really do rants, quite honestly.
Could you imagine how cool that would be if one day he finally just snapped?
Could you imagine how that would be the most played sound bites of all time if Bill was ever to go on a rant? It would be unbelievable.
I would pay such good money to see that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, next one. We have a rookie QB. It includes Hellman's mayonnaise, banana, a rocket arm, haters. Not included is Gia Duddy.
Ooh, wow. Well, I mean, that if the last part didn't drive it home already, honestly, this was from line 1, Dad. The Mayo Menace himself, Will Levis, coming off a massive weekend, tossing 4 tutties in his rookie debut for the Tennessee Titans, donning their Houston Oilers jerseys. Again, the throwbacks went 4-0 in the last 2 weeks. But, Dad, I get associated with mayonnaise a lot because of what I did in the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yes, you do.
The only person who matches and exceeds that intensity is Will Levis, who had a bunch of feats to his name. He bit through the side of a banana, peel and all, and then put mayonnaise in his coffee, which is even a line too far for me in the mayonnaise.
The only thing I'll say is your body looks like you eat mayonnaise. His really doesn't.
Man, let me tell you what. We need Will Levis, by the way, to put on for jacked quarterbacks. Like, we need this to be a run, because we had to hear as Notre Dame fans about how Brady Quinn might have been too jacked to play quarterback coming out of college and going to the NFL, and I'm sure people had similar things to say about Will Levis. We need jacked quarterbacks to have a home in the NFL. It shouldn't just be noodle arms out here. You got to be able to go out here and be an absolute unit and play NFL quarterback.
How great would it be, Mike, if someone ever said about one of us that we were too jacked?
Oh, my God. That's the dream.
It would be awesome, wouldn't it? Jesse, I love how Jesse felt bad when I said Mike looks like he eats mayonnaise and Will doesn't, but Mike knows that. He understands completely what I was saying there, right?
Oh, my God.
Where's
I was nicknamed Pudding as a kid, for God's sake.
Sure,
It's not a great thing. It's so true. I got called a silverback gorilla one time in an Orange Theory class in Miami, and it's to this day the nicest thing that anyone's ever said to me.
Wow.
I've never felt more alive.
You go to sleep and think about that every night. I love that.
Every night.
Okay, guys, we have Sensitive Superstar now, and I would like to point out that this is not strictly football related, these costumes. So I'll just
I know where
out.
we're going already on this one.
Okay, so Sensitive Superstar. It includes a burner phone, 2 all-star teammates, multiple Twitter accounts. Not included in this kit is going to be loyalty.
Wow. When we first started out, I thought we were going down the road of James Harden, but we're going with Kevin Durant, are we
Let's
not?
go!
Yeah, that is the Durantula.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. A burner is still amazing to have a burner. I mean, actually, it seems like a lot of work, quite honestly, for me.
I will say, post-burner account, Kevin Durant has aged remarkably on the internet. He's become one of our foremost poster athletes.
Agree.
And
I
now
absolutely
is doing
agree.
He like routinely jumps into Twitter Spaces and will just debate fans and debate other pundits. He just loves sitting around and talking ball. We've heard him talk about his approach to playing. I'm just going to do me. I just want to go ball and play. I want to compete, as the teammates around him have constantly cycled over the years. But, man, this dude just loves chopping it up and talking ball. So I think he's aged remarkably in that manner.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. I think he's done a nice job coming along there.
The biggest slight against Kevin Durant is still that he rejected the nickname the Slim Reaper, which is one of the coolest things you could call a basketball player. And so I'm always going to feel some type of way about that, Jesse.
You also shouldn't be allowed to reject nicknames. Okay, guys, let's go old QB now. So this includes a Pinch of Karma Cleanse, Inflated Ego, MVP Awards, Rocket Arm, repaired Achilles and not included is going to be a medical degree.
He outsources that to Joe Rogan. That is one Aaron Rodgers, who yesterday, I think my brother and his wife were watching the Pat McAfee show, and my nephew looked up at the TV at Aaron Rodgers and said, "Dad," because Aaron Rodgers and my brother bear a striking resemblance. So there's that, too, to go along with this. So shout out to Jackson, who usually is watching the show in the morning.
Attaboy, Jackson. What's up, bud?
Oh, my God. Wow.
How about Aaron Rodgers out there throwing the ball, in pregame? I mean, just, dude loves to be out there doing his thing, but it is pretty amazing for how short time ago he had that surgery. He's out there stepping, and before he was just kind of standing. Now he's stepping a little bit and slinging it.
In a day and age where people on OnlyFans are selling like bathwater and farts, I feel like bottling dolphin sex noises is going to have a real renaissance post Aaron Rodgers recovery here.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. I also did not know how to say that word, pancha. Is that the actual cleanse that he did, producer Slate?
Yeah, that's
panchakarma. I don't know.
That's the one where he was like throwing up all the time, which I think is part of the ayahuasca thing. I think the ayahuasca trip was part of the panchakarma. I think. Honestly, he had enough cleanses where you can definitely tell he's lived and grown up in California that I couldn't keep track of them all. But yes, you got that right, Jesse.
A lot of roads he's going down. There's no doubt about it.
I would never do one of those cleanses. No.
Nope. Would not do it.
You have to go into it was like 7 days of like cleansing. I think you can only have water.
I wonder to that point, because you're right. Like everything he did sounded miserable. Like honestly, he has my respect in a weird way for putting himself through all that stuff. Outside of the darkness retreat, that just seems like a nice chance for nap time.
It's a great nap. Phenomenal nap.
Too long.
I would learn nothing from it, but just get great sleep.
Too many days.
Yeah, too many days could be the criticism. I do wonder what Aaron Rodgers' approach to Halloween is, because he's a guy who seems to love mysticism. He dated a witch for a while. He got that complicated astrological tattoo. So I wonder what his affinity for a holiday like Halloween. This seems like this would be right up his alley.
He's got time now to put some effort into it, right? He's got the time.
Yeah, but I feel like we're like, oh, Halloween, like trick-or-treating and candy and costumes. And he's like, Halloween, summoning a demon with black salts.
Which would actually be cool. I would like that.
Honestly, I watched enough American Horror Story. I could be into that stuff. And at this point, if that's what he's been doing, I'm sure Jets fans looking on and watching him pregame, understanding that, beating the Giants was fun in the NFL punt fiesta. But if we'd like to actually do anything of value, Aaron Rodgers, who I don't believe is going to come back this season. I want to say that very loud. But you know what? I'm not a Jets fan who is working overtime with a Ouija board to convince themselves that otherwise might be true. And so they would probably encourage Aaron Rodgers to go ahead and bring that demon to the light. So we just did our Spirit Halloween costumes blind resume for a couple of sports figures there. It was great stuff. Great job by the staff here. Jesse, Dad, though, I have questions for you guys as the card-carrying parents on the show here. I, as a non-parent, yesterday had to go over to the actual Spirit Halloween store, which one of my favorite signs of the times. Like, just every year you've got markers for the fall, and seeing the Spirit Halloween stores pop up in random warehouses and stuff like that really just warms my cold heart. And I had to go in there yesterday to pick up my Rex Kwon Do costume and try and adjust on the fly because my other costume wasn't going to make it here in time. And so I'm going the day before Halloween. I'm doing the thing you're not supposed to do.
There you go. It's like Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve. Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. But I walked in there and I want to know, where does Halloween rank? And like having to go and do the Halloween costume shopping, having to take your kids out trick-or-treating, where does it rank on the list of things that suck about being a parent? Because I saw a line a mile long in here of crying kids. It's a store that's got a bunch of noisemakers going off in it, so I can't tell, is that scream coming from the giant animatronic Leatherface over there, or is another kid crying in there? What the hell's going on? Dad, what was your experience with us growing up with this stuff like?
I mean, luckily it's a place that's going to be noisy anyway, right? You
sure.
Especially, and one of the keys here, do we have one kid or multiple kids? You know, there was a difference of when we were taking you and Jake, and then when Sydney came into the fray, you know, taking 3 kids out somewhere. Now, you know, you're playing zone, you know, you can't play man to man. And we were always happy to go to a place, like I said, that's loud, so where you can kind of blend in. Then do you start to have kids that misbehave, start running around? The worst is because you want to think you're a good parent. And one of the worst things is when you're in public and you're trying to corral your kids and they don't listen.
Yes, I mean, that's what I saw a lot of. Yes, that's what I saw a lot of.
Because then you're worried about now there's the public perception of, man, my kids aren't, everybody thinks my kids run the show. They don't listen to me, which is, pretty much true. But that's the worst thing, is when you're in a public setting, multiple kids, or even one at that point, and they do not, get back in this cart or get over, and they don't. They go run and take off, or they take stuff off the shelves and they throw it. That's kind of the worst part, because now it's one thing when it's at home. It's another thing when it's out in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, that's
Jesse, I see a lot of nods of agreement over there and a long, faraway look in your eyes there. Did that hit close to home?
Yes, but also I will say my child is, about to turn 18 months old. So this is kind of their first real Halloween. Like last year, she was just a blob. So this year is her first real Halloween. And I ordered her costume on the internet. I wasn't going to go to the Spirit of Halloween and try and pick a costume out in person. And as for trick-or-treating, she doesn't really get it. She says Happy Halloween, great.
Right.
I don't know if she really understands trick-or-treating. I think I have yet to experience the multiple children really understanding Halloween thing.
Yeah, you haven't just yet. It's just like our, Jackson, my grandson, he's 16 months old. He'll go out for his first Halloween tonight. I think he's going, they're putting his stroller as like a plane.
Yeah.
And I know Jenny, she
oh my God, my sister-in-law dressed up like a pilot.
Phenomenal. It looked hilarious. It was very, very cool. But kind of in the same breath, not really knowing what it's about. You'll get there, man, when they can start running around and doing their thing. And then when you throw multiples like you're going into it, in a couple of years, Jesse, you're going to feel that, where having to corral them both, and try and handle that. For the most part, you kids were good, but every parent kind of says that, thinks their kids are good, and then all of a sudden from the outside looking in, they're like, who are these, ragamuffin kids?
Yeah. Do you need to just drink? Does that help?
I have done that. When we've gone out on Halloween, the kids are running down. While the kids are running down, knocking on the door, the parents are up, on the street, having a hot toddy, doing their thing. Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it. Yeah.
I don't even have kids, and that's what I do now. I go trick-or-treating with my friends that have kids just to get drunk and walk around outside in Southern California.
Because it's
awesome.
Fun. It's so fun.
Yeah, it is. It got to a point where Sydney when she was young, she was a swimmer. So she would be really tired all the time, and she would stay up at the top and have her friends go get her candy while she laid down on the lawn. So we didn't have to worry about her running around too much because she was always too tired.
But I have a question. What was your Halloween candy policy, Senior? In your house?
Listen,
just free for all or what?
This is when the kids were growing up and they went trick-or-treating, there was certainly a vig, right? When they came home, I would take 10% of the candy, and I would get to choose the candy. They weren't allowed to give it to you. Oh, I took your candy. You just didn't know it.
Ooh.
If you found out, you cried. So yeah, I would take their candy. As an adult giving out candy, Chris and I, my wife, we are big candy bars. And listen, now, one thing we found out when we did that is you still get small kids, like your daughter would come to the door and such. And there were some parents that say, hey, can you not give my kid a, monster size Hershey bar? They're 18 months old. So we would get minis as well. But for the most part, we are giving out big candy bars. And as I've said for decades, this is one night. Don't pull the rotting your teeth card, dentist card, all that kind of garbage. Give out candy. Enjoy giving out candy. Laugh with the kids. Smile with the kids. Let them eat their chocolate. Let them eat their favorite candy. Give them big bars if you can. And then we worry about it the next day or the next week or not at all.
Yeah, that sounds about right. When I was growing up, my mom used to, I think it was like we had a couple days where we were allowed to keep the Halloween candy, and then at like the end of the week, she threw it out. And we would put it in the freezer and leave it there but unfortunately I would be the one picking at it all the time once it was in the freezer. That's why I'm like, I need Halloween to be over because I've been eating the Halloween candy all week.
Oh, I've been eating it already. It's ready to go right by the door there. I just go by
it's in the bowl, and I'm just like taking it. Yeah.
That's the worst part is last year I walked back with extras after going over and helping hand out candy at my friend's house, and I didn't have the wherewithal to throw it away. It sat in there for months, and I would just go by every day and pick a couple of little ones out there and pick a couple of fun-size one out there or eat a little bit more candy corn. I just bought a whole thing of candy corn pumpkins that are over on my counter. I didn't need those. That's my second bag of the year. Don't look at the nutrition facts ever. It'll scare the hell out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. Favorite candy? This is always the great debate. Favorite candy?
So my top three are pretty easy for Halloween. Reese's Shapes sit at number one any given season. Now, the best Reese's product is probably the fast break bar. So if you're going to get that would be the option. But working from the traditionals, I will go Reese's Shapes. In this case, it's Halloween, so there'll be pumpkins. Number two would be Twix, and number three would be the Kit Kat bar, especially if we're operating with the traditional candies in mind. I am much more of a chocolate than a fruity kind of candy guy, and so that's my top three.
Yeah, my
Jesse, what do you got?
number one is Reese's. Those are my go-to.
Your number one is Reese's. Okay, my number three is Twix. Mike, we're along the same line. Twix. Number two is Kit Kat. Number one is the plain, good old-fashioned Hershey bar.
This is
just
one of your worst takes.
The Hershey bar. Why you got to rip on that?
Milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
I'll go milk chocolate. Oh. I don't mind the dark chocolate, but I'll go milk chocolate.
Yeah.
But plain and simple Hershey bar.
There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just like saying your favorite flavor of ice cream is vanilla.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's chocolate, as you can tell by my candies. It's chocolate.
We should have known. Yeah.
Yeah, I should have guessed.
Seriously, you're saying a Hershey bar is a bad choice?
Yes, for your number one candy.
It's a basic bitch choice. That's what I would say. It's basic bitch choice.
It is. She is right about that, Dad. I think that's the problem is, you know what? If this were 1935 and we're just getting around to the concept of candy when you were born, and you want to go and say, you know what, I love did you hear the news? They debuted the Hershey's chocolate bar.
Seriously,
this is remarkable. They're getting ready to launch the Titanic.
Because it's been around for a long time, it's the wrong choice to have as your favorite candy.
It's not wrong. It's just
one of the most
basic.
popular. It's one of those most popular candies out there.
We've come so far, and we've added so many other things to the equation. Like, you can get chocolate and peanut butter. You can get chocolate and nougat in other places.
Right, and I do enjoy that, but why is it wrong to just enjoy the taste of chocolate?
It's not
We're
wrong.
not saying it's wrong.
It's not wrong.
Just basic.
It's just basic.
And we just, we expected a little bit better from you, but we forgot you have a baby palate. So that's fine.
There are times I just hate you both.
Yeah, no,
and this is one of them.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Listen, I don't like to cast judgment on you, but I have to right now because you forced me. Coming up next, judgment was in high order at one restaurant here. We get to that and the most famous mustache on the internet next. Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Jesse Cofield. It's time to finish this show off the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off on into your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and Roku. And if you missed any of today's show, make sure you go check it out wherever you get your podcast here. We had some great guests. Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus, getting ready for the NFL trade deadline. Heather Dinich, ESPN senior football writer, covering the college football playoff. She's down getting ready for the rankings. We'll have a full rankings reaction for you tomorrow on the show. Digest everything we've seen, tell you exactly what it means for you and your favorite team going forward. And I'll likely be nursing a vicious sugar hangover and a real hangover because I'm going to drink and hand out candy and take my tax the way my father taught me to going into
You
tonight.
have to, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking a tax on your kids' candy.
Well, for me, it's not my kids' candy. It's the candy like I'm sitting there helping hand out at the front door. Once we take my buddy's kid out trick-or-treating, then I'll be sitting there giving it out. And last year, my buddy's wife, my friend Dane, proud listener of the podcast, his wife Hillary made a great buffalo chicken dip. And so we sat on the front porch with candy. Wow. We ate buffalo chicky dip, and then we had candy and poured it over the top there the way Jesus intended for us to do on Halloween when he started the holiday. So
that is awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to go and do that and also be drinking during that
right
time.
now,
so
that's where we're at. Yeah, because you guys aren't, under our thumb anymore, walking around trick-or-treating. So I have to dip into the candy that we're giving out the kids in the neighborhood here. We're not drinking along the way there, but I am definitely eating the candy. The fun here is the dogs' reactions. We let all 3 dogs out on the front porch when the kids come up and they like to play with the dogs. It's a pretty fun thing, but it is alcohol-free though, Mike, unlike your situation where there's plenty of it.
It'd be a hell of a lot cooler if you did drink, but we'll let that one ride, and we will get to this, that, and the third. And let's start off with this, guys. We talked about judgment in the world of parenting, which we'll get to. But first, we have got to get to something, Dad, tried and true that you and I have both abided by. Jesse, I don't know where you fall on scratch-off lottery tickets, but this has been a Golic family tradition for a long time. My parents, when they would come home, arms full of scratch-offs for our whole family to go through and just try and shred in hopes that we finally hit the jackpot, it was like manna from heaven. And that's what we had with our friend Jimmy Butler yesterday. Here he was, I think on Instagram Live, going through and doing scratch-offs for a desperate nation.
31, 32? No, that would be 52. Come on! $10. I'll take it. I'll take my 10. Yep. Not a damn thing. Can't never get rich, man. It's crazy. Just gonna have to work my day job, man.
Flex when you scratch it off, and there is something very pleasing, Jesse. I don't know how big in the scratch off game you are. We also love the pull tabs at the bar that you can sometimes get. Yeah, but the scratch offs, you get that sensation of being able to rub off that weird material with the coin. Ooh, I'm getting prickly just thinking about it.
You should hand those out to the kids, scratch off tickets.
Oh, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think that is an awesome thing to do. We love them. I mean, we get them by the handful, and then we take the winnings and we go buy more until it either whittles down to nothing, which it usually does, or goes up in a big amount. But yeah, we are big fans of the scratch off. Though some of these games, man, there is a lot of scratching off you got to do to get to nothing, in all honesty, at times. So there is a lot of a mess that it can make.
Yeah, well, I just thought it was hysterical. He was like, man, I can never get rich. Guess I have to go back to my day job. I was like, I think he's making this year, he's making $38 million or something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Too bad.
But you know what? 38 mil and $10, a $10 winning scratch off still gets you excited. I like that. It's pretty cool.
Let's go.
It's not quite Powerball, but it's going to get Jimmy through the day here and maybe buy him half of one of his own coffees. Jesse, let's get to that, though. We talked about parent disrespect before, and that was at an all-time high at one restaurant full of children.
Yeah, so this is a restaurant in Georgia. So here's what happened. So a family, multiple families, went out to eat. Apparently there were 11 children ages 3 to 8. And at the end of the meal, they get their bill, and there is a fee tacked on to the end for what it calls bad parenting. The restaurant calls it bad parenting, basically saying you can't control your loud children, so we're adding a surcharge to your bill. The internet is very divided over this situation, guys. I don't know what your take is. My take is that is a lot of kids, 11 children, but still, come on.
We have been out like that, when the kids were growing up and they played on a basketball team or a baseball team, and you go out and you take all the kids out. You have parents with you. There were other parents here as well, and it can be a bit of mayhem. You got to pick the spot carefully, right? Of where you're going to go. You're not going to some fine dining place. You're going to go that hopefully is a little loud and rambunctious. And she thought, again, that her kids were being really good and expected the manager to come up and compliment her on that. But you always have the weird view of how your kids are to you and how your kids are to public. I wasn't there. She said a lot of them were outside with some of the parents and they were running around out there. But a $50 surcharge, I love the ending. What was it? They called the restaurant for a comment by them about this $50 surcharge. And their quote was, "We're not going to comment on a policy we've had for years. We just want to live in the woods and cook." I mean,
okay. All right. You know what? I looked up this restaurant online. It's Toccoa Riverside Restaurant. It's in Tampa, Florida, I believe. This is where it went down. And it basically looks like a lodge, like it looks like a Cracker Barrel. And you don't get to all of a sudden pull this high and mighty card where you're basically a glorified Cracker Barrel from what I've seen. Give me a break on that one. I recognize kids can be, listen, as like a person who doesn't have kids, when I encounter large groups of kids in public, I always feel secondhand embarrassment for what I had to be like clearly as a chatty fat kid, because all they're trying to do, especially groups of boys, is they're loud and they're trying to show each other up and one up each other and impress their friends. And they're always at Chipotle eating lunch when I'm in there, probably skipping school on their e-bikes. And they're always really loud. So I get it. They could be annoying, but this is a pretentious charge. And this restaurant should be ashamed of themselves.
I agree. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and I would just not, and they'd probably be happy if I didn't take up my kids there if their restaurant is doing well. But that would make me say, you know what, I don't need you guys, and hey, if you don't need us, that's cool. I'll find somewhere else to go. You're not going to bump me $50 because you think my kids were bad and call it a bad parenting charge. But I will say, one thing we always did, Jesse, with kids is we tipped really well. Right. Because if you looked under our table when the kids were done, what a mess it was. And we would try and clean up some of it, but we certainly could never get all of it. So, man, we laid down some good tips.
It's like, be respectful as parents, but also then society should just respect the fact that we can't expect kids to act like adults.
Yes, exactly. Now, if they destroyed property in there and we find out any more about that, I will retract some of my statement. But in the meantime, you should be ashamed of yourselves. We also need Stugotz to try and call this restaurant and get a reservation for 12 kids. Yes. Put on the Dan Le Batard show. Free one for you, Stugotz there. God bless football, stupidity. Jesse, let's get to the third here. Internet sensation Dollarita Steve has entered the chat.
So there was an earthquake in San Francisco on Friday, okay? They're out interviewing people after the earthquake. They interviewed Dollarita Steve, who goes viral for getting on camera and just saying he was slamming Dollaritas when the earthquake went down. Take a look at this guy. This is why he's going viral, everybody.
Well, I was just slamming some Dollaritas up at the Applebee's and with my friends, and it was a big shake. It was only like probably a couple seconds, but it was real. Everyone stopped talking. Yeah, it was heavy. It was a big one.
I mean, you look at the mustache. It's just, you can't blame the internet for thirsting over him.
Well, see, this is Travis Kelce's America. This is what he's done to mustache conversations now. Because, Dad, I don't look at this guy and see overly objectively handsome, but the internet lost their minds for Buddy.
They did, and this is. For a local news, when you go out and you're interviewing bystanders, you're never, a lot of times you're going to get someone that gives a yes, no answer, and you're just like, God, I got nothing. You got something here, right? When you can get a guy that goes viral sensation, you're like, okay, we hit gold with this guy, because you look at him and you're listening like, okay, that was all right. That was fine. But man, it went viral, and that's all that matters.
And listen, you know what? I don't think there's going to be a lady out there that would complain about a first date slamming Dollaritas at Applebee's with this guy. That's all I'm saying. We hope you don't complain about listening to the show. Download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Have a great Halloween. Give out king-size candy bars. Be safe. We'll talk to you tomorrow.